And the reason why we're talking about being invitational and we're not talking about conversion. We're not talking about proselytizing. We're not talking about tips and tricks to work Jesus into a conversation with a stranger. We're talking about being invitational because I believe that's how Jesus lived. If you look at the things that Jesus said, if you look at the way he taught, and if you look at the way he lived, you'll notice that pretty much everything he presented to the world was couched in an invitation. We see Jesus around a table with his disciples the night that he was betrayed, giving us what we now call the farewell discourse, John chapter 13, 14, 15, and 16. Jesus did some of his best work. He hosted some of his most memorable moments at a table. And then he went on to tell us to do the same thing. He passed this method of ministry along to his people. Here's where it is. You ready for it? 3 words. Don't eat alone. Because in Jesus' day, both in the Jewish religious world as well as in Roman culture, the people you ate with meant a lot. It was boundary markers. It was identity markers. Like who you ate with was a big deal. If you were up here in society, you just ate with people up here. If you were up here as a religious leader, you just ate with people up here. And if you were down here, you were just kind of stuck with the people down here. The two did not mix. And Jesus turned that whole thing upside down, and it fired up the whole world, the Jews and the Romans. They hated how he was going about the method of his mission. It made no sense to them. I believe that in a culture that is wildly divided and hostile or indifferent to the good news that Jesus came to bring, I think if we recover the simplicity of sharing a meal, we just might find opportunities to share Jesus with the world around us. Jesus does some of his best work around a table, and I want to talk about 3 reasons why I think that is. The first is it allows us to connect on common ground. Grab your phone, go ahead and pull it out, and I want you to go to the Photos app of your phone. Maybe there's like a search field that comes up as you open that up, and I want you in that little spot to just type in the word table, T-A-B-L-E. But as I scroll through here, most of them are gatherings with family, friends, and neighbors that we've shared together. It's birthday parties, it's New Year's Eve. This is so common. Like everybody loves a table. Like it doesn't matter what you are disagreeing with someone on. It doesn't matter where you come from spiritually or politically or culturally. Everybody loves a good meal around a table. One of the things Jesus did by setting tables for people was he was trying to communicate, especially to those who are on the outcast of society, I'm the Son of God, I see you, and I care about you. Secondly, it allows us to avoid what I call stranger danger. Okay, so I grew up in an era, and I'm not blaming the church for this, it's just how I received it, but I grew up in an era where evangelism equaled forced interaction with strangers. That's what it meant. And I knew as a follower of Jesus, and you're serious about your faith, you're called to carry forward the Great Commission. And what that means is you need to have forced interactions with strangers. And a few good stories I have of trying to do it, and it didn't go very well, right? And I think that's actually why so many millennials in the church are nervous about it. Because in their minds, they're connecting evangelism equals forced interaction with strangers. And understanding Jesus's method of using meals totally shifts our understanding of what it means to share the kingdom with people in our world. I believe that talking to strangers requires courage, yes, but inviting someone to a meal requires relationship. One is something that you muster up for a moment, and the other is something you cultivate over time. None of us are going to invite someone to a meal or to coffee or tea or to have a drink. None of us are going to invite someone to do that if you don't already have some level of relationship with them. The table, the meal requires a level of relationship. This is what Jesus was doing, is he was building actual relationships with people, not forced interactions with strangers. It allows us, I believe, to avoid so much of what the world is scared of, what they're paranoid about. and allows us to enter in a meaningful place into people's lives. And lastly, it creates space for the good news. The early Christians called this philoxenia. They spoke Greek, philoxenia. And what that means is the love of stranger, or the welcoming of a stranger. We now call that hospitality. But it was the church who came up with it. Before the Christians showed up on the scene, people were not inviting people into their homes. People weren't setting up settings for people, the strangers, to come in off the streets and to find a safe place to stay. Y'all, Christians came up with all of that. They are the originators of hospitality because they lived it in relationship with Jesus, and then they extended it when the Spirit of God fell upon them.